The Belfast Historical Society invites you to take a look through a window on history. Join us in considering the people, places, and events that for over 200 years have been woven into the fabric of the city we know as Belfast, Maine. Window on History, Season 2, made possible with the support of these local businesses: Crabio Raposta Funeral Home, Dutch Chevrolet Buick, Front Street Shipyard, Green Tree Coffee and Tea, Interiors by Janice Stone, Maine Country and Coast Real Estate, MTA Accounting, Perry's Furniture Incorporated, and Tall Pines Healthcare Community. Please, let our sponsors know how much you appreciate their support by supporting them.
Welcome to the Belfast Historical Society's Window on History. This program is Voices of Belfast Past, and I'd like to welcome my interviewee. My guest today is Mr. Harold Jones. Harold has been a lifelong Belfast resident and has been very active in the community and in the business world of downtown, and we're just going to take a wonderful talk about his life and Belfast. Welcome, Harold.
Thank you, Amy. Well, to start with, I was born right here in Belfast, the corner of Cedar and Salmon Street. It's an apartment house today. It has 5 bedrooms on the second floor. And my father and mother moved there about 1918 from a different area. My father was 20 years older than my mother, and it was a bachelor till he was 50. And by the time he was 60, when I was born, he had 5 boys under 10 years old.
Wow.
If you can imagine that, you've got quite an imagination. But I had a very good childhood. I got a lot of hand-me-down clothes through the area, and I was well protected by 4 older brothers anytime I run my mouth too much. But my mother had a good system. We had supper every night about between 6 and 6:30. There was a large bell hung outside of the door, and when that clanged, you could hear it from Elm Street to Durham Street, Congress Street, down. You better head home.
Wow.
And we all sit down and had a meal together. Because my father got out of work in the store approximately 6 o'clock, so dinner was about 6:30. And from there, different things that I remember in my childhood was one of them. We had a closet upstairs, was probably 6 by 7 feet. But you imagine how many dress shirts, 5 males in the family, because when we went there, we all had dress shirts and ties on. And I remember my poor mother ironing the shirts endlessly, and because you didn't have spray starch, it was all the Argo starch mixed in water, and you hoped you got the right mix, and didn't end up with cardboard on the collars.
Yeah, exactly.
But we made our own fun. We had outside games, and in the wintertime, Airline Street was blocked off, so we went sliding there practically every night. I know most people would think now going from Northport Avenue all the way to the shore and walking up, back up. One trip would be enough, but we would go from 7 to 8 or 9:30. Never seemed to get tired. It was lots of fun to see if you could grab somebody else runner and hit him for the ditch.
Oh, yeah.
And other things that we did, George Robinson had a boys club on the 3rd floor of the Opera House, and he kept things very interesting. He planned trips for the older boys and did a lot of hiking with them, but In the room we had up there, there was a ping pong table and plenty of books to read and different types of games to play. He was very interested in boys, and they named a job Robertson School for him.
Now, at that time, you were able to go to in-town schools, so you were fortunate to be able to walk to all of your schools.
Yeah, there was only, anybody south of Miller Street went to the Pier School, and Miller Street on went to the, well, it was McClellan School, and it became the Governor Anderson School.
Right, yeah.
And they was 6 grades in each one. And the Pier School was 1, 2, and 3 was on the first floor, 4, and 5, and 6 was on the upper floor. The teachers were all female, I remember at the time. One thing about it, when I got out of the 6th grade, I remember my father called me to his store. He owned on Main Street. And I wasn't quite sure, because usually I went right home, and I went down, and he wanted to show me a brand new model of Ivy Johnson bicycle that he had come in on display on the sidewalk, which I went out and was admiring him greatly. And he casually said, "It's all yours." It's the only new bike I ever had, because I'd always had hand-me-downs from my older brothers.
And I'm sure they were in wretched shape by the time they got to you.
Yeah, they were well worn. But it was the big balloon tire at the time, and not the little skinny tire you see today.
Right.
That was one of the highlights of there. And from there, because 6th and 7th grade was in the Carvey High School with the 4 higher grades.
Okay.
And first thing I noticed going there was a tall, well, I can call her an old maid school teacher now, but she would be standing just inside the door, and when you went through, she reminded all gentlemen that took the hats off when they went in the building. If you didn't believe it, she removed it for you.
That was her job?
She made it her job.
Oh, okay.
But it's very impressive. And another thing I've noticed, looking back to then to today, when you went into school, you stopped talking till you got to your room. And also when you changed classes to go to different rooms, there was a person stationed outside of each door in the center of the hall, and you went single file around them.
Oh yeah,
And,
hall monitor,
yeah.
as it were. Yeah.
And and there was no talking while you was in the hall at all.
Wow.
So you didn't worry about getting run over. If somebody was visiting, they could walk by you without getting run over, such as.
Yeah, well, going back to your house for just a moment, because you told me something the other day we were talking, that your family had their own cow.
Yes. Yeah, we had a cow. Actually, we raised pigs, and we had chickens. And to this day, I've only met one other person that had ever eaten egg stew.
Egg stew?
Well, my wife said it's just the same thing as egg gravy, only you don't thicken it.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I had some for dinner yesterday.
Oh.
And I think it's great. My kids think it's great. There's nothing but hard-boiled eggs sliced up and put in with butter and milk, with butter, salt, and pepper, all it does to it.
Oh.
But I could see why we did. You were feeding a large family. We had chickens. We had milk from a cow. So it was a pretty reasonable meal. And we all enjoyed it very much. But
Yeah.
since then, I've only met one person that ever had it.
Egg stew,
And
yeah.
I'm kind of surprised at it in one way, but perhaps I was lucky enough to have it and other people didn't.
That's true, especially growing up during the
Yeah.
Depression years in Belfast.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that was one of the, and another, as far as the meals went, we had a lot of seafood because you could dig clams anywhere. And people dug clams, they'd like to go in and barter with my father in the store to get something. Because, I mean, you're talking a pack of clams, just $1 or $2. So he always ended up with shell food, and so we had them at home. It was either haddock or clams, and even scallops.
Okay.
They were very plentiful in the bay at that time.
Right.
And our dooryard, so to speak, it was going down Salmon Street, was over 200 feet, 300 feet going down Salmon Street and 200 feet on Cedar Street. There's only one other house on Salmon Street between Cedar and Northport Avenue.
Oh.
Salmon Street was a dirt road at that time.
Okay. Yeah.
And on the other side of the road, there's only 3 houses between Cedar and Northwood Avenue.
Yeah.
And so we had room to have our own ball field, not quite regulation size, but a
Okay.
lot bigger than anything else around. So we was a kind of a community gathering place.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine so, having 5 boys in the family, that
Yeah.
you were the magnet house that
Yeah,
people
yeah.
would come to. And
And you could always pick up a baseball game. A lot of times you didn't have more than 5 or 6 on a side. You didn't have a full 9, but you could make it do. And
that's
if
not
you had
bad.
one baseball bat and the ball quite often was wrapped in black tape after it went into the wood and got wet, you just didn't have another ball to play with. That one
Right.
sufficed.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I can remember I was left-handed when I played, and all the kids around me are all right-handed.
Okay.
And the first mitt I had, I bought off another boy. It was a catcher's mitt for a quarter. But I thought it was a great thing. I used it in all positions in the field wherever I played.
Yeah.
It was,
Multi-purpose.
it,
Good. Well, we've talked a little bit about your father's store. We should explain to everybody who your father was when he came to Belfast, where the store was located, what sorts of things that he sold too, because it was multi.
Yeah, the store is actually right where Weaver's Bakery is today. And my father, he came to Belfast from West Brooksville in 1892. And he went to work for Fred Carr, which that store included the store that's for sale right now above Weaver's Bakery, and Belfast Draw store was all one store. You could go between them all. And Mr. Carr died in 1898, and Miss Carr made my father a partner with her, and that's when it became Carl and Jones.
Carl and Jones. Okay.
And it stayed Carl and Jones till approximately 1918, when I believe she passed away, and he bought the building separate from the others. So he actually owned the building itself plus the inventory where Weaver's Bakery is.
Okay.
And he was a big with Edison, and some of the signs you'll see that was over our door on the street. They had a big Edison name across the top. He was a big Edison dealer in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And they were beautiful cabinets because they was all wind up. And the first Edison read it, but just before he made the flat record, the records were circular. They're about the size of the paper inside a roll of toilet paper, only a little thicker.
Oh, the rolls
and
or the tubes.
They turned around
Yeah.
that way. And Edison was one of the first to have the flat records, 78s.
Yeah.
And they were either 10 or 12 inches in diameter. And we had a large selection of those. And then in the late 30s, they shifted over to a Philco brand, because that's when the refrigerators were just starting out.
Okay.
But to go back to Mr. Edison, my father actually went to a business meeting in Boston and met Thomas Edison.
Yeah. Wow.
But then the store, my father ran the store, he passed away in 1946. But before that, in the store they sold everything from crockery to cooking utensils, wallpaper, paints, and we even had a big candy counter across the front that sold bulk candy. Just about anything you could name was sold there, except not real heavy hardware. We didn't carry any of that. But wallpaper was the biggest product. At any one time, we'd have over 1,000 rolls of wallpaper in the cellar. And the cellar was divided in about 2-foot square racks. We stored the different patterns.
Oh, okay.
And one of my jobs being one of the youngest, because all of us boys worked in the store as soon as you could make change. Was they had a rack at the back of the store, probably 40 inches high, with a slanted in front with a display book of the paper pattern laying on top, and we would turn them down, similar to what you go to a store now and see rug displays. They'll have them stapled together, but
Oh, okay. Yeah.
these were probably 4-foot long and 2-foot wide books, and you
But,
turn
but,
page.
you, but you stood there
And
and
they
you
turned.
turned the pages for them.
And
yeah.
because you had wallpapers for the bathroom, you had wallpapers for the kitchen, you had wallpaper for the bedrooms and the living room, the hallway. And actually, I think there was 6 different papers for the ceilings. They were all white. But at that time, everybody papered the ceilings. And I look back and now I think probably because most all ceilings were old plaster and they would get cracks and you couldn't cover them up with anything, so paper over them. And also,
Yeah, it was-
everybody burned wood. You could rip the paper off when it got black and put a whole new ceiling up.
Yeah, a real
But
affordable
there
way
wasn't,
of
there wasn't
taking
any
care of
real
that.
good paints that painted upside down on the ceiling. They're all lead paints.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and
So I
thick.
told them that was it. And as I mentioned before, one of my jobs was show that stand there and turn the pages down, and they would ask the price of it and that type of stuff. And most people were very good about it. But once in a while in the evening, you would get somebody to come in and you'd do it for half an hour, 3/4 an hour, and they would look at the watch. Oh, thank you, but we're not ready to do anything right now. We're just waiting for the kids to get out of the movies.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also told me around Christmas time, up on the 3rd floor, you had, or the 2nd floor, you had Toyland.
Yes, and that was a big thing, because that was before your shopping malls
Right,
were
yeah.
popular at all. And there was a wide stairway that went up to it. If you go into Weaver's Bakery today and get permission from Mark or Matt, you can look at the tin ceiling out back, you can see where the stairway was cut up through.
Oh, okay.
It was probably 6 feet wide, and it was nothing but all toys. And one of the big things about it, we started in September and October getting the Christmas toys in, but all your carts and tricycles, they were all metal, and they were all put together, and with nuts, bolts, and cotter pins. So when you come in and you saw, I like that tricycle, they didn't go out back and get a box and you took home and put together. We went to the attic and brought down one all put together.
Complete.
So you went out with it all whole. You didn't have to put anything together. But those are all, and there was, I'm going to say there were hundreds of them we were put together and stored in the attic before that time.
And ready to go.
And your red flag carts there, the 4-wheel there.
Oh, yeah.
They were our big popular item for years.
The flyers.
Yeah.
The red wagons. And, yeah.
And of course, Santa Claus always had to show up.
Oh, that's right, yes.
But,
Now, did one
yeah,
of you boys play Santa Claus too?
no, we was all there.
Okay.
In fact, the first few years I was believing Santa Claus myself because I'd see him come down the stairs in the attic. He left his sleigh up on top.
Good, yeah.
And but the kids would come in the flock and of course talking to him and all, and mothers would bring him in.
Yeah.
But you've got to be pretty close to 65 to 70 to remember it at all.
Yeah.
But I can remember Mr. Larry that I worked for in Hanover. He can just barely remember coming in. But as he said, that was a big thing. Electric trains, he was
that's right.
and that type of wind up, and those type of things, yeah. But we closed it down after Christmas because there was never that much going on the toilet.
Yeah.
No one had, they would come in, and the toilet inventory stayed up there, but you usually show it when somebody come in and want to buy a birthday present or something like that. But it made too much area for the clerks downstairs to cover both areas.
Yeah, that would make
yeah.
sense. Yeah. So let's go on to your high school years. You did go to Crosby High School. You were actually the class of 1945, so you were in school during the war years.
Yeah.
Which was, in addition to yourself being in school, your other brothers, and of course your brother Fred was also a graduate of the Crosby School. And
Yeah, I went, actually in high school in 41, then when the war started. And I was on a softball when the principal come in and wanted to talk to me, and I went outside with him. I didn't figure I'd done anything wrong, but he got outside and he says, "You're supposed to go right home." Well, I was a little surprised at that, so I went right straight home, and that's the first time I ever saw my mother and father crying. They had just got the telegram that just been delivered at home that my oldest brother had been killed in the service over Birmingham, Germany. He'd been his B-17 had been shot down.
Yeah.
And that they took it very hard. That was one of the first things. And but I stayed fairly active. I never played any sports in high school because I was too short for basketball, too light for football, and too loud at baseball.
Too loud?
Too lousy.
Oh, lousy. Because I know you have a reputation as a talker, so I was wondering. Okay.
But we did play Thomas in basketball, and at that time there wasn't any bus to take you. You wouldn't anybody that had a car to get there.
Yeah.
And we only had 5 players on the team at that time, and I was a manager. And he got down and one got fouled out, so they had to use me. Mm. And the court was so small, the sidewalls were inbounds. So they got real good at shooting bounces off the ball to the other end of the court. And I mean, there was no out of bounds. You hit the sidewall, that wasn't out of bounds.
Oh, okay, really?
It was
no
kidding.
Kidding.
It was a real small court. I think it was a basement of a church.
Okay.
But I was one of and the Civic Center in Rockland had just got opened up, and we had the same thing there. They ran out of players, and they had to put me in just so they didn't have to forfeit the game. But I was never a player. I never did anything very fancy.
Yeah. Let's jump ahead a little bit. Let's because I know you spent many years with the A&P in Belfast. So let's talk about your years with the A&P.
Oh, it was right after
where they were
I got
located.
out of the service in '48, and I worked between my father's store and when the first actually would keep part-time, I would go across there and work. But I was standing on the steps of my father's store, and a gentleman come up and wondered who I was. I told him, and he said, we're looking for some help. I don't want a full-time person. Because that picked my ears right up. And and he said it was the A&P down, well, that's right, well, I trust what it is today, but I very seldom went down in that part of town. But I told him I was very interested there, and his name was Cliff Oliver. Some people remember, but he was manager for a number of years. And I went down and went to work for him there, and little did I know that's where I would be for the next 32 years.
Yes.
Because when I first went to work there, the store was very small. If you're going to Trustworthy today, there's a large stanchion probably 30 feet down from the door. That was the back wall of the store.
Okay.
But in '48, the year that I went there, they started when the landlord started to enlarge it, and then they over doubled it in length. I think it's close to 90 feet long, deep now.
Yeah, it's a deep store.
And when I went to work, there was no meat department at all in it there, and they added a much larger produce department and a service meat department across the back of the store.
Okay.
But one of the things, when they did all of this, they pushed pretty well back into the right-of-way in back of the store. And they found out afterwards the right-of-way to the back of the store in that area. They came up from Washington Street up behind the Colonial Theater and in behind our store, and it was too small an area to get a semi in and turn it around and get it out. So what happened, they had to cut a hole in the front of the store, Trustworthy. It's on the lower side of the store, probably 3 foot square, but all of our freight went down through that hole and rolled to the back end. Okay. We never had anything brought to the back store.
It's still a tricky spot to get in and out of, so I can see how the trucks would have trouble.
So, but for night deliveries, just inside of the front door, they made a canvas, I guess you would call it a tent.
Okay.
Probably was 8 feet deep and probably 12 feet long. They had the steel posts that we set in the steel sockets into the floor, and there was a zipper on one end of it. And the truck driver could come in and fill it full, and the only drawback when you come in the next morning, why you had to put something outside so you could get in through to unzip the zipper to step out through the side to take the stuff out into the store. Yeah. And then after it was all emptied, why you had to undo the thing and fold it all up, and it was made in 2 pieces, so you roll it up and on each side of the front door. It looked like an awning standing on end, so to
Okay,
speak.
yeah,
And it was tied back that way.
And it became a permanent part, and then you'd pull it out again?
Yeah, set it up every night and tear it down every morning.
Okay.
Not the most convenient thing.
No, but, yeah.
It sufficed very well. I mean, because A&P had their own bakery in Portland, so you got bakery every day, and other times your produce would come that way. And also meats, because meats at that time came, they was a quarter of a beef or a half of a beef, or
Oh, that's right.
pork would come with a pig split in two. I mean, they would, the 4/4 of beef would probably weigh 150 to 200 pounds, and they had to be picked up and put on the cart and pushed to the back of the store.
And then you had a butcher that was...
Yeah.
Who was the butcher at the time, do you remember?
Arthur Burns was the first one, and Al Hopkins,
Okay.
his three boys still live right here in town. He just passed away 2 or 3 months ago. He and I worked together all the time. So he was a cashier when I went to work there, because there wasn't any meat department at that time. But after he opened up, he learned the meat business there. And he was a big, strong man, so he was... I wasn't strong enough to pick the pieces up himself. Cause they
I was going to say, they weighed more than you did,
Yeah,
I'm sure, at the time, from what you told me from your youth. Yeah, I think we're coming towards the end of our talk here. We're down to the last few moments. Is there anything that in particular, I know, one of my favorite things is our little bit of film footage that we have from the 1930s with the Pygmy Circus. And you were a 4 or 5-year-old child at the time, but that was kind of a fun thing for your family to do.
Yeah, it was. It was actually a neighborhood between my parents and my children there. There probably was 15 or so children there involved. But the field actually was just off Congress Street, coming down Selman, where there's 2 houses, one built right behind the other there now. But it was a field was cleared, but the mothers made a tent out of grain bags, which is all good quality cloth at that time. And they were split down the sides and opened up lengthwise and hung from wire. I presume probably it was old telephone wire, because Jim Robertson, who owned the field, he was the head of the telephone company.
Right.
And why was my grandfather bringing a load of 8 and 10-foot cedar poles by horse and wagon, and they were all pounded in the ground, and the wire was strung on tops of the poles, and the bags hung from that to make the oval out of. And then, because all circuses have to have parades,
That's
and
right,
the parade went down Salmon Street, High Street. At that time, there was a dummy where the light is in Maine and High. We'd just come up through there and back through Post Office Square and back Church Street, which was a long walk, because a lot of the wagons or carts are pretty...
Yes, you see in the movie footage, you're hauling, dogs and pets that have been shaved to look like lions, and a pony, and yes, and you did it for a number of years, and I was always amazed that up to 700 people could come. You did 2 shows.
2 shows, because it's right in the summer, so you didn't have the lights for the night show. I did find one of my mother's receipts. One of the first ones, they took in $55.35.
Yeah. And you split the money between all of
the
your
3 oldest
children.
boys, one my oldest brother and Wesley Spider Robertson. Some people remember him, and then another person. They got $5. It broke down the line by age more than anything else. Remember, my fee was $1.
You got $1.
But
well, Harold, I'm actually at this point, we're going to have to wrap up a little bit, and I'm going to have to thank you so much. It was so wonderful talking to you, and I love hearing, the stories of your childhood and life in Belfast and life in Main Street. So,
well, thank you.
I wish you well.
Just to mention the $1, I said that was a day's pay for most working people
That's right.
at that time.
That's right. And you were all of, 4 years old?
Yeah, 4 and 5. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out this morning.
Mhm.
Joining us is Captain Bill Abbott, a 1945 graduate of the Maine Maritime Academy in Castine and longtime Penobscot Bay pilot. Welcome, Bill. It's such a pleasure to have you here. We've had many chats, and you've had such an interesting life and many, many years as a as a Penobscot Bay pilot. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up, and then coming into Belfast and your career with the Pilot Association.
Well, we'll try to answer your questions.
All right.
Let's go.
Okay. So where were you born and when?
I was born on Verona Island. That's just below Bucksport. Nobody knows where it is, on the Penobscot River. October 25th, 1922. It was a house my mother owned up on the road. And then down to the shore, there was my father's old homestead.
Okay.
And we were just 3 miles from the watering trough in Bucksport. So it snowed, a light snow that morning, and my sister tells about remembering my father standing out in the road clapping his hands for Dr. Snow to come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He just had to clap his hands?
Yeah, he was standing there. Apparently I was already born. He was clapping his hands like he was.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I had a half brother and half sister, and we had a nice family. Lived in a house, and had a barn and shed, and we had a cow and horse growing up, so we were self-sufficient, raising vegetables and hay. Haying was always fun in the summer, especially you get to drive the hay rake and drive the horse. That was super.
Yeah.
So then, my father was a pilot on the Penobscot River, and he piloted the ships from Fort Point to Bangor. And then the bigger ships came into Searsport, he'd go to them and hang them in Tentacus and bring them in there.
Okay, catch them off.
I can remember riding with him on the river when I was 5 or 6 years old. There was a tanker called the Baycoy that ran there to the eastern for years, bringing in number 6 oil.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I was going with him there, called night off from Winterport.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. And up the next morning, I got up on the way, but we had breakfast, and the cruise and the galley was down in the front of the vessel, the forecastle. And I can still see that red and white checkered tablecloth and the smell of bacon now today.
Oh, nice.
It was quite an interesting, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great your father would take you along. So that really is sort of imprinted on you.
Yeah, I must have.
This might be something that you wanted to do.
I would go with he piloted Saucony boats. They were canal boats.
Okay.
They had a 3-horn whistle. They could play a little tune.
Ooh.
Like all policemen got their feet down there.
I don't know that one.
Smokehouse shoveling smoke.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
Oh, that's silly little things.
Yeah. And you went to school in Bucksport?
I went to school on Verona when I first,
Verona?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
They had a one-room school, and I had all 8th grade in a one-room school.
Really?
It was interesting because you could learn fast. You'd listen to the upper grades and stuff.
Yeah.
Then the mill moved in 1930,
Okay.
and so they had to build. A lot of people built down in Verona Park, which was a summer place, like Northport.
Right, like down in Bayside.
Yeah, like Bayside.
Yep.
So they moved down there, and they had to build another section under the school.
Okay.
But it was kind of too bad. They lived there in the winter and put wood stoves in, and if it get fires, they had 2 big fires and burned up half of the cottages down there.
Really?
There's only a few left today.
Oh, I was wondering if there was anything left, because it was just like in Bayside, the sort of the main lodge
had
or
all
hotel, and then
fancy. Yeah, they had a big hotel, dock, and weekends from Bangor there would be a steamboat with a band and pass the ship, and they'd go down the river and stop at. Well, the one while they stopped at Sandy Point, Fort Point, Northport, and go on to Camden. And then in the afternoon they'd go back, pick people up. And so a lot of families that lived in Bangor had summer cottages in Northport. That's how that kind of come about today.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that used to, I know we talked about the boat came right into there was a dock in Bucksport, so you could watch the Boston boat.
Then the
as
Boston
they
boats
were.
came there too.
Yeah.
They arrived they went by our house every morning at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they went out about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they stopped at Rockland, Camden, Bucksport. One while they stopped at Northport once in a while. Years ago they stopped at Northport.
Okay.
Then they stopped at Bucksport. Years ago they stopped at Winterport, and then they skipped that and they went to Bangor. And I think
Of course, they came to Belfast too.
Yeah, they came to Belfast, then Bucksport. Yeah.
Yeah.
Camden, Belfast, and Bucksport.
Yeah. Big run.
Then I think they left Bangor 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they do the same way back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then down to Boston overnight.
Down to Boston, yeah.
And come back. Yeah. I know a lot of people did commute. I mean, even
Well,
out of
yeah,
here.
well, we had some friends from Worcester, Massachusetts, and they had a summer place there. They bought their cars on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the boss was always interested to watch the Boston boats land,
Yeah.
because it was a tough place.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they'd miss the dock. Once they ended way down almost to the bridge.
Oh, okay.
You know, so.
That's right. And then the bridges were built during your early childhood.
Oh, yeah,
Before
when
that,
I-
there had been a ferry service.
Yeah, I used to go on the ferry.
Oh, you did go on the
Oh,
ferry.
sure.
Ah, which
Yeah.
was people think of ferries now as big boats, but I actually have a photograph of the ferry,
Yeah,
basically a flat
They
sort
had
of
one ferry
scow.
could take 4 cars. That
Yes.
was good.
And he would just wait for
Motorboat
people.
alongside, pushed it, they get over there and they turn it around, push it back the other way.
Yeah.
And my mother had to take my father to Port Clyde for ships once in a while. She got home late, they'd wait for her.
Oh, really? Oh. So she would drive your father all the way to Port Clyde to
Yeah.
pick up a ship.
Yeah, he'd take the ferry, or somebody'd come in from Manhattan, pick him up, he'd get aboard Manhattan.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you end up at Maine Maritime Academy? And, you know,
Well, that's kind of mysterious.
Oh, okay.
I really don't know.
I read something about getting the bus or something, or
Well,
taking a right turn.
I was going to the University of Maine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, there I was in Bucksport. My father put me on the bus in Bucksport, and I was headed for the Maine Maritime
Oh,
Academy.
really? Did he?
I think Herbert Emery was a director, and I think he got me into it with my father, and he got me into the Maritime Academy.
Okay.
So that was a good move.
Yeah. And you told me, because this was during the war,
Right.
you had a very intensive, shortened.
Oh yeah, it was only 18 months when we went in, but then they elected it 22.
22 months to get
Yeah.
you up and running.
One thing was interesting, they had a guard walking all back and forth the road, a wooden gun.
Well, you were safe. And this was training just for general
This was training for
seamanship or
engineers and
engineers?
decks. You graduated with a 3rd mate's license, and the engineers had a 3rd assistant's license.
Okay. And so you graduated and then
45,
you found yourself very quickly.
July. But they went sent you down to Boston to what they call a recruiting manning office, RMO. So they'd put you in a hotel, and every morning, 8 or 9 o'clock, go down there and sit. And as ships coming and going, wanted crew, you was on a list. And
Okay.
when you come to your name, down you went.
Bang, you went, yeah.
I went to the City Service, Ohio, a wreck.
Oh, yes, you did show me that, yes. Yeah.
Was it going to Captain says, it's a good place to learn, and it would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet you were sort of taken
Yeah.
under
Didn't
everybody's
have-
wing at
Had
that
a
point.
magnetic compass, didn't have a gyro compass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, at what point, you told me that you also did some training in Long Island Sound.
Oh yeah, when you went to the academy, you got to have
Oh,
3 months sea time.
Okay.
Well, they wouldn't send you out in the ocean on ships. Now they go put them on ships to get the sea time. So we trained in Long Island Sound and used the New York school ship.
Okay.
So we go down there 3 months. They'd send a train down to Bucksport, and they'd bus everything from Castine up to the train.
Wow.
Then the train would get us to New Rochelle, and they'd bus it from New Rochelle down to the New York Academy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that was actually kind of a fun time
Oh,
because
yeah.
you would get that incredibly long leave time right in New York City.
Oh yeah, wow!
Yeah.
We was out 2 weeks, then we was in for 36 hours. Each shift had 36 hours in New York.
And you packed it all in, I'm sure.
Boy, yeah, what a great time!
Yeah, I know you got that wonderful portrait taken. I know you told me
Yeah,
about how you.
was it 3 or 4 of us walked around, looking around. We always went to Saks. There, jewelry counter. They always had a good-looking girl there. Woman, you're waiting on time. So we was in chilling with her. She said, "Oh, they're taking pictures up on the upper floor." So we went up and had a picture taken.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot of good memories. Yeah.
And you probably had a nice camaraderie with and future people that you were.
Yeah. No,
In
I
business with
still have a connect with my roommate, and he's in California, and we still talk back and forth,
Oh, good.
write letters.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then war service, you were. Fill me in on that, because I can never quite get that.
Oh, well, on the war service, they had convoys going across the Atlantic and stuff, and then the ships were all blacked out, so no lights. And
Okay.
when I got out, they had lifted some of the things. It was coastwise. You could use your running lights.
Okay.
So we had running lights going coast, and they had the navigational aids all going too. So. And no convoys on the coast, so everything was safe within.
Yeah, but were you on a military ship, or was it on the
Was on an old city service tanker.
the city service tanker?
That was a steamer originally, and they experimented with they put 2 diesels into a.
Okay. Oh.
Number of the diesel was 9/10.
Okay.
So that was interesting. Every once in a while, she'd stop and they'd work on the engines. When you're going in out of port and back to the pilot house, you have 2 black balls. If you're can't maneuver, you hoist those up. Well, those were made fast all the time, so you just ran around the corner and hoisted the black balls up.
Oh, okay.
We did a couple of times too, coming out of New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So following the war.
Following the
You-
war, then I went on a nice T2. I went on 2 different T2s. They were nice ships. Went across France,
Oh.
the Havre, Brest, went down south of Roubaix, down in that area. And we come back and we went to dry dock in Baltimore. And I was on the Cottonwoods. I had a nice Captain Ahoy. He was a very nice fellow. And I called up my father and talking to him. He said, "I need help." So I packed my sea bag, went down to a street in Baltimore and measured up for a suit.
Oh, yeah.
One day afternoon, I went down and picked it up.
Yep.
That wore for years.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So that's how you
So
got,
I've been back here.
you got back into Maine.
So I'm back there ever since.
But somewhere along the line, you met Betty.
Oh, you want to know how I met Betty, I suppose? Well, I had a sister who was married to Peters Patterson, and they taught in Westport, Connecticut. So I'd go down and visit them. I had a nice convertible, and I'd zip down there, have a great time. And I went to pick him up one day. He taught at a junior high, Bedford Junior High, and this nice-looking lady walked out. I said, "She's going to be mine."
Okay. And you brought Betty to Maine.
3 dates.
Yep.
She's still here.
That's where she is. So you bring her to Maine, and I know what you told me. Life on Verona was not a.
No, I had it fixed. I fixed the old homestead all up. Had it all fixed up nice. Moved her down there, and she went crazy.
So which brings you, yes.
So I moved to Belfast,
Yeah,
and that
there
was
we
the
go.
greatest move I ever made.
So what year was that when you came to Belfast?
1947, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a very, yeah.
So she knew people. Clyde Holmes invited us to parties, and she got introduced to people. She played golf all life, so she got met at Berry Lane, and they played golf together every day almost. So.
At the Northport Golf Club.
Yeah, so she was home like friend.
And you at this time, you were very busy, or you?
Oh yeah. Well, I was really busy because we didn't have a pilot association.
Okay.
And when you hit a pilot, you had to go. That didn't help my honeymoon any. I was on the honeymoon up in Vermont. I called home. Father says there's a ship coming in a day or so. You got to come home.
Oh.
Well, I packed it up. Boy, what a quiet ride home.
Oh.
Darned if the ship wasn't a couple of days late.
Oh.
Oh,
And driving back from Vermont, and I mean,
Yeah,
you probably
they're
just squeaked in,
quiet,
you know,
quiet,
with the roads
quiet.
the way they were.
Crooked, that was awful crooked drive too.
Yeah, I was
Hilly
gonna say,
drive,
you
yeah.
can't get there from here now.
No, still there, yeah.
But you mentioned that there was no pilots association, so
No, there
that
was
is
no pilots,
something that you
you-
actually helped put together and organize.
No, there was George Jennings is the pilot, Roy Meads is the piloting. And everybody had their own work, and Gil Hall was doing some work, and I got a hold of Gil, and let's put it together. So we put it together and formed the Pilot Association.
So you could kind of rotate.
Yeah,
you told
then,
me, rotate
then it
out
made
pilots.
some sense. You got all the work, so you could work. You could have we worked a week on, 2 weeks off. One of the weeks you was on call if you had more than one ship.
Okay.
Some they all come in bunches. Sometimes all three pilots were working.
Okay. And these are all. Yeah.
We did 6 ships one day
Wow.
with 3 pilots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you to kind of run through the routine when you got a phone call that said a ship was
Well,
ready,
yeah,
and then how did you actually get
Well,
get to the ship?
The big ships had agents in every port. They have some people does all their work.
Okay.
All the pilots taking supplies, and customs and immigration. They do all this stuff. And if they need any food and stuff like that, that was a big deal for the agents. Any food, they used to get a cut on the food bill. So.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
Oh,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Yeah. Cutting the steward and the captain all had a little finger in the pie there.
Okay. So you get the phone call,
Yeah.
and then what do you do?
They give you an ETA that we met them at Monhegan at the Whistle Boy.
Monhegan. Yeah.
Yeah, so you go out there, and we had three people use the pilot boats. Sherm Stanley did the most of it with his lobster
Sherm
boat.
Stanley. Yeah.
Yeah, so he had a little 28-foot lobster boat and built in Friendship that was a slick old boat for a pilot boat.
Okay.
Because they had a canvas side and nothing to jam you. When they got a regular pilot boat, you can get jammed between the top of the boat and the ladder.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And that still is that very tricky maneuver where you have to get from that small boat
Yeah,
onto
that's
the big boat. Yeah.
That's the way pilots get hurt, is getting on the pilot ladder.
Yeah.
Because the ship is rolling up and down, the pilot's going up and down, the pilot boat's going up and down. You want to get right when you're on when the ship rolls down and you're on the top.
Yeah.
Get aboard and scoot.
Yep. Matter of timing.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the dead of night, sometimes in rough
Oh,
weather.
yeah. Icy, worse when it's icy, and, yeah. Blowing. Got a boat blowing 80 miles an hour one day out there.
So now you're on the boat and you're off of Monhegan.
Yeah, then they meet you when you come up the ladder, and deckhand takes you up to meet the captain. You go in the wheelhouse and say hello to the captain, shake hands with him, greet him, bring him up. I'd like to have a newspaper. You ought to have a newspaper, yeah. Then you ask him about his ship. Well, first thing you do when you get up on the bridge, make sure your ship is headed away from the rocks and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So she's in safe condition. Then you talk with the captain to see what anything that the ship does unusually.
That's
steers
how
bad,
she goes, yeah.
back to port. Well, most all ships back to port. That's a standard procedure.
Okay.
So, but most all ships steer pretty good, but some are bad steerers. I had 2 or 3 really bad steerers. So then then you just go along. You know the courses where you're going. You go up your courses, pick up your buoys, and go along up the bay. Only thing when it's foggy, you don't go. You lay off Monhegan, wait till the fog clears.
Okay. And you were either going into Searsport, or were you going all the way up the river to Bangor,
No,
or what were your destinations?
Well, mostly all tankers to Searsport
To
and
Searsport,
Bucksport.
okay.
Yeah.
And Bucksport.
Searsport was the one they had the pipeline there from Searsport to Loren for those big air tankers. We had a lot of business when they were there.
Right.
Yeah.
So would that be twice a week, once a week, twice a month, or?
Oh, I don't know, probably 10 trips a day. Oh, probably 5 or 6 for you. Pilots probably altogether 10 ships or something like that. It wasn't a busy port.
During the year? you
No,
said?
during a month.
Oh, during a month. Oh,
No,
okay.
no.
Because I still,
We used to get about 30 ships a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That's what I was wondering. And you told me, amazingly, you're only on the vessel for a very short amount of time. It was not
About
a...
4 hours or so. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Unless you get caught in the fog. I got an Esso ship, had to run up anchored off Sears Island.
Yeah.
Boy, he wouldn't move till it was cleared up.
Oh,
I think we waited there 2 days.
really?
Yeah. Then he cleared up. He said, I said, it's clear. Well, he said, don't you go till I look and see.
Oh, okay.
So then you get underway. Then we'd anchor up out by Manhattan. The water was pretty deep. You'd probably just laid 2 out there.
Okay, yeah.
So you could anchor up by Mesquite Island, you could anchor off in Rockland. So that's 2 places you could anchor.
Yeah. And then once you got them in, you would then leave the ship.
Then, yeah, you leave the ship.
You didn't have to take them back out again.
Yeah, well, you had to take them back out.
Oh, you did?
We tried to have the same pilots take the same ship out.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, but didn't always work that way. But usually you did the same ship. Yeah, some of the ships around here pretty steady. You got real friendly with the captain.
Well, I would imagine you'd have the same captains.
Take them out to dinner once in a while. Then once in a while they'd have us aboard for dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, the Norwegians had a separate saloon for the officers. The captain, the mate, and chief engineer had separate.
Oh. Hierarchy.
No, I had a Dutch ship like that. They'd go and have a tenderloin, and the steward come in with a tenderloin. He examined it all out, see it was all right.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You know, I still see, from my house, I can see the tankers sitting offshore waiting to go in. I often wonder, what are they doing when I think they've already been into port and then they're light.
if they're light, they're still, well, they might be part loaded and going to Buckswood. Sometimes it was split load, but see.
Oh, okay.
But if they're out there and anchored and light, they're waiting for orders. They don't have any place to go.
Oh, okay, that's what I was, yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes they sit out there for 4 or 5 days and they're,
Oh, sometimes they get sit out there loaded, waiting to get a berth. Somebody else in the berth.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still
So it's
very active.
interesting. Used to be a big coal port. And Pocahontas Coal had a contract for Great Northern. They had a boat running there every week, trip a week.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
coal. Yeah, I forgot about that. So Belfast Harbor, when you were here in Belfast, was a very different harbor from what we see today.
Oh yes.
And you weren't exactly bringing boats in, but you
No,
were very aware of,
You're limited
the
to about
waters.
16-foot draft in the Belfast Harbor.
Okay. Yeah.
Like those ships going in Searsport drawing 32, 34 feet. So, yeah, Belfast was interesting. Little chicken things, fat, floating around the.
So I've heard, yes.
Yeah, the boats would be all lined, kind of yellowish and black with chicken fat on it.
And you also had sardine
Yeah.
stuff.
Then
going
the
in.
sardine factory dumped theirs, but that wasn't too bad a deal at all, because you could they catch fish up there like it, and the harbor pollock, everything came in there to feed. You could catch fish like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
no,
I've heard flatfish and
Yeah,
flounder.
yeah,
And of course, mackerel running.
yeah, yeah.
But there weren't the amount of pleasure boats in
No,
the harbor. It
no.
was still a very working.
Yeah,
And
there wasn't
the tugs
not
were
very
here.
many of those either. Yeah,
Excuse me.
not very many working boats either, except the 2 sardine carriers. They had 2 sardine carriers that Glen Lawrence had for the sardine factory. And they laid there all winter. And then they'd come in loaded. You'd see them come in loaded with sardines, right down to the rail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then also, weren't boats coming in for consumers' fuel, the coal business there, and the
When I was there wasn't much of that business left going. They used to have barges come in.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was just about all done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. So I remember when we were talking the other day, you know, the dangers and twists and turns in piloting, and you know how you know. So I did mention, you know, about, you know, just the dangers and the things that got in the way, and you told me something quite wonderful about the rocks.
Oh yeah, you know, people think you look at your pilot, you know where all the rocks are, but you don't. You know where they're not.
That's right. That's really the key.
And then piloting in the river is interesting too, because you got a lot of sharp bends. And you learn to play the currents and let the currents help you. And, yeah, that's it.
You once talked about in the fog even knowing the barking dogs, which barks you could recognize.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And how long it took to.
Well, I didn't use the bike. I do the ship's whistle. You can blow it down, going down by Spruce Head, you get an echo from the shore.
Really?
Oh yeah, then you get stopwatch, you count your time, you can tell how far off you are.
Okay.
Same way out to Manhattan Island, that fog signal station out there had a horn and had a radio station sending out signals. And to get a bearing on, they were the last sound on the signal was timed to the last blast of the foghorn.
Okay.
So there was a little formula, you took the difference, figured out the formula, you could figure your distance out.
Figure out where you were. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So.
Oh, yeah, it was all kind of old tricks years ago. Yeah.
Now the amazing thing is you did this job for 55 years?
55 years.
How many?
I started
Yeah.
1946
Yeah.
when I came out of school. I made 12 trips. No, I didn't make 12 trips. I got my license.
And overall, I think I read 3,000 trips.
Yeah, about that.
3,000 trips. Yeah.
And I was only about 23 piloting those ships up there. And especially those old pilots, they'd look me awful sharp when I went aboard.
Oh yeah, that's right.
One
the
old
kid.
guy in the Burt Rhino, he was sitting there with just his undershirt for top part and suspenders and half shaved. He says, "Where's your father?"
Oh yeah. Well.
But we got up the river.
Good. Good. Well, I think on that note, I'm going to thank you very much for being my interviewee today, and it was a real pleasure and so nice hearing about you.
Very good. It's my pleasure too.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Hope somebody enjoys it.
Window on History, Season 2, made possible with the support of these local businesses: Crabio Raposta Funeral Home, Dutch Chevrolet Buick, Front Street Shipyard, Green Tree Coffee and Tea, Interiors by Janice Stone, Maine Country and Coast Real Estate, MTA Accounting, Perry's Furniture Incorporated, and Tall Pines Healthcare Community. Please, let our sponsors know how much you appreciate their support by supporting them. To learn more about Belfast's distinguished heritage, visit the Belfast Museum at 10 Market Street. The museum is open June through Labor Day, Tuesday through Saturday, 11 until 4. For our off-season museum schedule, call 338-9229. And to view today's show again, visit our website, www.belfastmuseum.org, and click on the video button. Thank you for joining us.